Hi, my name is Shonna Brown, and I am the host of Talk with Shonna. I'm a singer, songwriter, recording artist, currently living in Brampton, Ontario, originally from Wolfville, Nova Scotia. The theme song to my show is actually my original song called Turn Up the Microphone. You can find it on YouTube. If you could all subscribe to my channel, Shonna Brown on YouTube, that would be awesome. Thanks everybody for watching, and here's the show. Hello, everyone. You are now watching Talk with Shonna right here on the Fired Up Network, Female Empowerment Movement. I am extremely excited to have an old friend that I am happy to say I've known for many years, went to high school with, grew up with, on the show today. His name is Morgan Farrell. Everybody give it up for Morgan. Hi, my friend. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
Good. It's been a while. We have a lot of catching up to do. But I am really excited actually to have you on the show because I've known you for so long and I've known you being in bands and, being a musician for a very long time. And so for everyone that doesn't know you as well as I do, where are you from originally and where are you currently located?
Well, I grew up in Wolfville, Nova Scotia, and where we went to high school together. And I started playing music there, in high school bands and whatnot. But I moved out to Western Canada in 2001. And so I've been out here. I've been in Vancouver for about 15 years now. And this is where I reside. This is where my life is based out of now. And where I play all my music. It's a pretty good city for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. 15 years. That doesn't make me feel old at all.
I know, right? I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like the viewers to know, when did you first get involved in the music industry? And was there something that inspired your involvement specifically?
There's a few different ways to answer that one. I don't know if I didn't have a conscious thought that I was going to get into the music industry. I just sort of played, as lots of us do. And the longer you play and the more you book yourself shows and whatnot, all of a sudden you sort of find yourself in the industry.
Yes.
And so I don't even know. I don't know when I would say I entered it. It just sort of, it more came to me as opposed to me going to it, kind of thing. But if we really, in the 90s, in the mid to late 90s in Nova Scotia is when I first booked gigs that I got paid for, I suppose. So that would be, one way of measuring it. Sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Yeah. I was just going to say, is there something that specifically inspired you to get into music? Yeah.
I think it was just in my blood. It just sort of, my dad was a musician, but he never really played that like when I was a kid, but it was just sort of, I just remember for my 14th birthday, I just said, I want to get a guitar for my birthday. And, so I got a guitar for my birthday and a bass, and I started out playing that. And then just sort of, I don't know, it was just sort of something that I just always did. It was never a conscious thought. It just sort of came naturally. And so I don't know. I fell in love with it very early on. And so I guess I would say I was inspired to continue and to keep pushing for bigger and better shows for my whole life. I'm still doing it now. So
definitely. I know. I remember going to see you at different things like Valleypalooza. Used to play there. I mean, our own version of Lollapalooza, if anybody's wondering what that is. And I remember you always playing at that, and I thought that was really cool. And you're still going. So I'm really happy to know that. I have some pretty funny stories of you back in high school. I remember when we were all sort of into the punk scene, and I think at one point I remember you having spikes And I think
Oh
I
yeah.
went to school with like this big ponytail spike. I don't know, like it was just, that was a good time. I still remember those times. They're very dear to my heart.
It was the 90s and
I know
everybody.
the 90s. You gotta love the 90s. Like, come
Oh
on,
yeah.
Nirvana. Like we were part of that whole scene.
Yeah.
It's funny. My daughter just got a Nirvana shirt and she doesn't even know where they are. And I'm like, girl, you got to listen to me. I got to tell you all about this.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just really funny. So yeah, you were saying your dad was a bit of a musician.
Yeah.
Do you write your own music?
Yeah, I do. Um, I played. I worked in a cover band for about 3 weeks, like 20 years ago, and that was a bit of a turning point where I learned the difference between playing music for money versus playing music for passion.
Yes.
And I stopped playing in the cover band pretty quick, and because it was just a job, and the first couple shows were fun, but then after doing like 5 shows a week, for a few weeks, I just said, this isn't why I play music. I don't care about the bar tab and the $100 or whatever I was getting paid. So
Right.
yeah, so I write uh, all my own music. Um, Blacked Out, I do a lot of the writing. I'm the sort of the main singer. We have our other guitarist Lee. He writes quite a bit of stuff as well, and he sings. He's like the lead vocalist on like a handful of songs. So we sort of like co-write or lead that band, but then a lot of the times, like the songs, I'll plop a fully finished song down and be like, here everybody. So yeah, I definitely write most of the stuff for Blacked Out. ATD is a little more of a collaborative kind of thing. ATD is a little more of like just like sort of straight ahead punk rock, like hardcore band kind of thing. Old hardcore, not like the new metalish jock hardcore stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and so those songs kind of like a little more simple and kind of just come together like kind of quick sometimes, like because there's only like 3 riffs and the song's like 25 seconds long or whatever. Like, and so it's a little easier to write collaboratively. Whereas Black Note is we do a little more like technical, you know, songs are longer, lots of different parts. Um, Part of my songwriting thing that I enjoyed, I don't know why, to be annoying, I suppose, is that I don't like playing the same thing twice. So even if there's like 3 verses in a song, I'll make sure that something is different. The melody will be a bit different. The chords might be a bit different. There's might be a riff that's different here and there. So, it's hard to write that stuff collaboratively, like when you're trying to make every single part of the song like slightly different than every other point of the song.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it keeps it fresh, that's for sure. And like you want to have that live feel of like you're jamming or you're kind of in that moment, right? And creating that
Yeah.
moment, right? So I get it. But yeah, but to write that down and for everybody to know, like it's kind of kind of hard to put that stuff.
Yeah, you kind of got to put it together and then mull it over and go, this part flows, make sure every part kind of like builds on every other part. And then, you
Mhm.
know, so yeah,
Well,
harder to improvise that kind of stuff and come up with it on the fly.
true, true. I'm kind of going off topic, but have you come to Toronto? Have you done shows in Toronto?
No, and
Oh,
I don't know why. It just
yeah.
has never really come together. Blacked Out toured out east once, and this was back when we very like first started the band, and we did not know anything. We didn't know what we were doing. We were, so we drove out east. Our first show wasn't even until like Kingston, Ontario. So we drove all the way across the country. I think it was Kingston. We played like a bunch of like small market stuff with like local bands, like shows that didn't pay anything. We had one promoter book us like all of our like maritime dates, and then we got to the first show and he said this show's happening but none of the other dates are happening, and so we ended up with like a week and a half before our next gig, which wasn't until like Winnipeg. Like it was like a disaster.
Wow.
A
Yeah.
beautiful disaster. I wouldn't change
Beautiful
it for the
disaster.
world. It was, we were young enough and naive enough that it was still like super fun, and but yeah, somehow like even in that tour, like Toronto just was like not a spot that we got to play.
Yeah.
And then in any of my other bands, I played in Bishop's Green for a while, and I would have thought that I would have played Toronto with them, but it just sort of never worked out. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know why.
Well,
I've been to Toronto, seen some great shows in Toronto.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I have
hopefully
lots of
you make it out
friends in the
here.
music scene there, but it's just never worked out. We
Yeah.
we did have some stuff booked for COVID, like when COVID canceled it. So we were going to
Yes.
play, I forget where, Bovine maybe.
Oh yeah, the Bovine Sex Club. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's a good
I
gig. That's a great gig.
I don't remember, but yeah, it was. Yeah, we lost. I mean, everybody lost all their tours.
Oh, I know. I was going to ask you about how COVID affected you. I mean, well, it affected all of us in a crazy way, but
Sure did.
did you find it? I mean, it affected the music business, that's for sure, right? I mean, would you agree with me on that? Like, it definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it sure did. We had so Blacked Out's like last record. Um, our release date um, was March 27th of 2020.
Oh,
And then COVID happened, everything shut down mid March or whatever. And so, and we had a Eastern Canadian tour booked, a Western Canadian tour booked with Belvedere. So that those were all going to be good shows, and we were starting to work on a Europe tour and had, things in the works and had our album release. We had the trajectory of 2020 was going to be a good year.
jeez.
I think we ended up canceling 60 shows or so, something like, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
super fun, but
yeah,
and then the whole thing of like, how do you release what do you do to release a record in a pandemic, right? Like,
yeah,
and who knows how long these things are going to go, and the same questions that everybody had. So I remember having a conversation with our label, and he was just like, I was like, man, what do we do? Like, do we release it? Do we save it and hold on or whatever? And he's like, I don't know. It's like,
yeah.
it's not like there's like a playbook for how to release a record during a pandemic.
I know. Yeah, there's no like Cliff's Notes or like.
No.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
anyway, we went ahead and we released it. Like, we just went ahead as planned, and you know, um, and we lost a lot of gigs or whatever. I would say if I could do it again, I would maybe like release it, maybe not in the first 2 weeks of a global pandemic when everybody is worried about toilet paper and
yeah,
they have enough, beans and flour and stuff. But
yeah, yeah. No, just like
yeah,
blocks in the mix of that. Everybody
yeah,
like, toilet
yeah, totally.
paper.
Like we lost. I'd say we just kind of got buried a little bit because of what the world was doing at the time. But
Mm,
we got some like good reviews, and then a bit later, you know, I think people were just at home finding themselves with a bit more money because they're not going out or doing anything. And we sold a ton of merch and records without playing any gigs because
wow. Well,
people just
that's
wanted to
good.
like support. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it was great. I was making multiple trips to the post office and packing up. It was a bit of a full-time job there for a little while, just packing up t-shirts and stickers and records and making 2 or 3 trips a week for a bit. So it was great. So we got to kind of like bank up a bit of cash uh, to put into other things later, once things started firing up again. So I don't know, right?
Yeah,
Was it good?
yeah,
Was it net? I wouldn't release a record in a pandemic again. I
yeah,
would I
yeah,
would hold on to it because I really miss playing all the gigs. That's like the most fun part for me is performing stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
I mean, it seems like you did pretty well though, considering like with being able to sell your merch and doing well that way. So that's good. I mean, I'm glad
yeah, it
that.
was really weird too. It wasn't like I was like posting stuff like, "Hey, buy our merch." Like I
Mhm.
just like sort of like we released a new record, so a bunch of people ordered it, and then I was just for content's sake making posts about like, "Hey, thanks for buying records." And another trip to the post office, and it just sort of did this like snowball thing, and I don't know. Anyway, so we really benefited in that way. We
Yeah,
probably would have sold more if we had been playing shows, but it worked out.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if I don't think I've ever asked you this. Did you ever attend school for music? Is this something you studied? Did you study? No. Okay.
No.
Well,
No.
you
I
studied
took
like the real
yeah.
world stuff.
I'm pretty like self-taught. I do have to give credit to. Do you remember John Tatro?
Yes, I do. Very
Yeah.
well.
So I took lessons from him for like I don't know 3 months or something when my parents first got me that bass guitar when I was 14. My birthday is in April, and so I took lessons, but until John takes the summers off. And so I took lessons until John stopped for the summer, and then I never took lessons after that. So yeah, I got like 2 or 3 months of lessons, which was like a wonderful like sort of foundation. But then I just figured it out as I went along.
Yeah, I mean, John Tetro is a very good musician. He's a very good guitarist. Like he's
Yeah,
yeah up there.
yeah,
So that must have been a great thing for you to learn from him. I know he's good. He's really good.
yeah. He did this thing where he'd try and work on some theory, like for like the first bit of the lessons, But I
Hmm.
was like 14 and like I don't care about this or whatever. This is
Yeah,
boring or whatever.
yeah.
And then he always would say like, bring me a tape of some music that you're listening to, and I'll like transcribe it for you. Or for me, he
Hmm.
put it in tab because I couldn't read music, and
Hmm.
so yeah, the like second half of the lessons was always him going through like, you know, I'd bring like a Rancid song because Rancid has
Hmm.
fabulous bass lines or whatever, like I
Ah,
and all the music that I was listening to that had like something like an interesting bass line, I'd be like, "Hey, can you show me how to play this?" And
mhm.
so it was great because I got to like learn songs that I wanted to learn how to play.
Mm.
And as much as I might have like resisted the theory stuff, like it snuck in there a little bit. It was like years later before it sort of clicked,
Right.
and I started going, oh, but every now and again, I still can like hear John's voice, and I can picture myself being in his studio and him showing me something, and like that's like still like the foundations of my songwriting are still you know partially due to him. So
That is so cool. I
yeah,
love the fact that I know John too, because he influenced me a lot too in the music business and what I was doing with my music.
yeah.
Um, okay, so what would you say your particular style of music is? Maybe we can talk about Blacked Out first. So what style of music is Blacked Out? If
I don't.
people for people that maybe don't know you.
We're a punk band, and I know that that's like a big,
I
it's a
love
very
it.
large umbrella which covers
Yeah.
you know a lot of different, very different bands can be considered punk rock.
Yeah.
So um, I we're pretty like in the melodic. I think what people who are in the punk scene would call us like a melodic hardcore kind of thing.
Okay.
Hate punk is a bit of like a dated term now, I guess, but that would also apply to us. But yeah, lots of like lots of riffs, lots of melody.
Hmm.
So don't really like to. I used to like kind of scream or try to. I don't know. I don't know what I didn't know how to sing, so I was just barking stuff out.
Right.
Um, but I didn't have like a good scream voice, and I was destroying my voice trying to do that. And I also was trying to scream melodies. Oh, my phone
Yeah.
just gave me
Yeah.
and so yeah, it didn't really work out. So anyway, I've like worked a lot of my voice, and now we like kind of try and have more like it's all pretty melodic, and But yeah, a lot of riffs, a lot of like solos, stuff that punk music isn't necessarily known for,
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
still being a punk rock band. We tackle a lot of more like historically like kind of political stuff.
Oh,
Recently, we've gone a little more inward and a little more self-critical stuff. Because as you grow older, we have more experiences and you know
yeah. Hmm.
struggle with some things. And so yeah, I don't know. That was a very bad way of describing what blacked out is, but
No, it's okay. I totally get it. No, that's cool. Like so, yeah. I mean, we'd say more so on the punk end of things.
oh,
How?
it's all like at no point do we be like, here's a blues song. Like that's not what we do.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
yeah.
do you and the other bands that you're in, are they punk as well? Like the ATV and your
Yeah. So
you're
I'm
talking.
only really playing in the two bands right now, which is wonderful because at one point I think I was part of like five it's a lot. It gets to be a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I ATD is like just more like straight up kind of like old school like punk rock. And it's just like we've gotten off stage and people have just been like, you guys are just a punk. You're just a punk band. Like just
right.
it's nothing flashy, no big long drawn out intros, no whatever. It's just like a smack in the face. I don't think we have any songs that are over 2 minutes long. Most of them are like one. Like it's
Oh,
just
cool.
yeah. It's just and
Nice.
our front man Ben is he's a wild guy. He's all over the stage. Very reminiscent of old like Chai Pig, like old SNFU kind of
Oh,
like
yes.
he's just everywhere and I don't like to stand still on stage either. So anyway, ATD's got a lot of energy that kind of like pushes up. So yeah,
I
it's a
love
lot of fun to be in that band. Um, yeah, I used to play in Bishop's Green. That was like the biggest band I was a part of. Um, Played in a band called the Authorities, which is like an old like Southern California, like from Stockton, started in the '70s, kind of like the band's older than I am, kind of thing.
Cool.
Um, did a tour in California with those guys, recorded a couple tracks with them, but I don't know. Old legacy bands tend to sort of like you pop up, do some things, and then everybody gets busy, and then
And
you
then it
know.
kind of
So I think
right.
technically I'm still part of the Authorities, but we
Hmm.
haven't done anything in like 5 or 6 years. So
Ah, okay.
yeah,
That's cool though. But hey, you're still a part of it. Like you never know when it could pick back up again, and that's kind of how it works sometimes. Uh,
yeah. Like if they were like, "Hey, let's do this thing," I'll be like, "Absolutely, let's do it."
let's do
So
it. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Well, speaking of touring, so I heard that you have this European tour that's coming up in the fall. That sounds really exciting. Can you
yeah.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So us and our Blacked Out and our buddies, the Core, both Vancouver punk bands. Very different. They're a lot more like melodic, like kind of old '90s, like reminiscent of like No Use for a Name, kind of
Aha.
like they're definitely not like pop punk, but they're definitely like softer than Blacked Out is, like a
Okay.
softer edges.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wonderful band, wonderful guys. Um, and so we've both been trying to get over to Europe for a long time and just had things like COVID cancel or, something kind of just kept coming up for them and as it did for us.
Hmm.
And then Steve Rawls, who's the singer of Belvedere, also has a booking agency, and we're friends with Steve, and uh, so Steve just said, "Hey, why don't both of your bands go on tour together? You're like a perfect fit."
Mhm.
And we both been like bugging him to book us tours over there. So he said, "Let's just put you together and get you over there."
Right.
And so, yeah, so he kind of pieced it all together for us. It was really rad of him. And yeah, the we this is going to be we've all toured Europe before. Well, not all the members, but I have with Bishop's Green and a couple members of the Core had been part of the Real Mackenzies for a little bit, and so like we're like a bunch of us are familiar with like how it goes to
Right.
touring over there is a lot different than touring in North America, you know?
Yes.
Um, and so we're all looking forward to getting over there. The scene there for our styles of music is definitely, it's just, it's better for what we do. Um,
Right.
you know, touring Canada or the States, you can get 30, 50, couple hundred people out or something for a show, but over there it's like a small show is still like 100 or 200 people or something, right? Like for our genre. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great. That's
yeah, we're really looking forward to it. Um, and flights are all booked.
good.
It's all happening. We're just in the process of ordering our merch and everything now. So yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll
fingers
definitely be
crossed
looking
that
out for
we
you.
don't have another global pandemic
Oh,
and we
geez.
can
Yeah, I
not.
know, right? I know, right. No, I'll definitely be looking out for you guys and seeing what you guys are doing. I wish I did punk music. I don't, unfortunately, but I have a very special place for it in my heart when it comes to that kind of music. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I was looking at some information about you, and it said that you are a mental health worker at PHS Community Services Society.
yeah.
And I thought that that was really amazing. I thought that was very cool. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do there? I think anything to do with mental health is so important, and I'm so pro like getting everybody educated on it and in sort of breaking the stigma that comes along with it too. So, can you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So the PHS is a organization that works in the downtown east side in Vancouver.
Hmm.
The history of it was of the organization was that they're champions of harm reduction before harm reduction was really even like in the greater dialogue.
Right.
Um, the idea was to house the hardest people to house, like historically, and you know don't evict them, love people through what they're going through,
Hmm.
meet them where they're at, like instead of having like an unattainable goal for them and then cutting them off from services when they don't meet the goal that's not attainable. It was more like let's make our services meet where they are, right?
Right.
And so that was sort of like the foundation of like the I guess mandate or whatever of like of how it started. That was back in the 90s, and it's grown. It's a massive organization now. They manage like a bunch of housing units and supportive programming. So like Insight, the original safe injection site in Canada, is operated by the PHS. Um, so that's where I worked there a lot for like a couple years.
Hmm.
My partner was the manager at the time of Insight, and so when I first started working in the PHS, when people would call in sick, I'd get like the elbow, like, hey, can you work for me today?
Right. 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 Right.
You're
Yeah.
like, I wanted a day off, but
Yeah.
okay.
Oh.
um, and so mental health worker is like the title of like most of the people that kind of work in the organization.
Hmm.
So it can mean you can wear a lot of hats. It can mean that you're doing intake at the shelter or something, or it can mean that you're working in a housing unit. And you know working in housing means like you spend a lot of time sitting in an office and you're kind of just like pushing security locks to security doors so that you know because you do have to kind of control the flow with our population.
Right. Yeah.
Or it can mean where I've been the last number of years is I work like a mobile harm reduction van, and so I drive around the city. It's like an on-call service, and people can order harm reduction supplies, and I can go deliver them right to their house. Also, people report improperly discarded like needles that might be like in their back alley or whatever, and we'll kind of go pick them up. So I go grab a van in the morning, calls come into the work phone, and I drive around and pick up needles and deliver harm reduction supplies to people. Yeah. So, but I'm actually like, I'm phasing myself out of that work because I got a new job where I'm building guitars and like kind of managing a guitar company here in East Van, Coloma Guitars. So it's very exciting. It's, I think I'll end up missing like doing kind of working in the harm reduction field.
Definitely.
But at the same time, it's tough on the heart.
Yeah.
You see a lot of pretty gnarly stuff and find yourself in some pretty, I've witnessed some pretty horrific things over the years. And, some people just, that's okay for them. For me, it's time to take a step back.
Yeah.
Because it's a large emotional toll. And I only have, we all have sort of finite resources. Even love is infinite, but sometimes you run out of energy. And I really just want to be able to put my best foot forward with my family and my kid now. Definitely. And I don't like coming home from work after like a particularly hard day where I've like witnessed some like very traumatic things.
Right.
And coming home and just like needing to be like quiet and in space like for a bit. Like I don't want to do that. I want to come home and like walk in the door and be ready to be like, hey buddy, and like see my kid, and so like I said, it's not for, it's, some people are fine doing it forever, but I'm bowing out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've been doing it for a long time, and to be doing that kind of job you should be proud of yourself because you really are helping out a lot of people, and it's a need in society. And the stigma about mental health, I mean, I always talk about this on my show, is that we should be able to talk about that kind of stuff very freely and be able to reach out if we need help. And there's a lot of people that don't understand it or just feel embarrassed, or just they go along with the negative stigma that comes with it. And I like to share my experiences of, I've had bouts of depression, anxiety, I've had other things, and we should be talking about it, and we should feel open with each other and not be judgmental of each other, because there's a certain point, everybody needs help at some point in life, I think. So that's what I like to promote on my show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like, you can go and you can talk about it. Right? Yeah.
It's pretty like funny. Like same. Right. I've had some low points in my life, and I've, I think everybody does at some point. It's just whether or not you label it or not, or, how deep you go sometimes or whatever. I've struggled with some substance use. Maybe not struggle, but I've had, some times where maybe it was a bit much, and working with the population that I work with, I find like I can speak more freely with them about my experiences than I can with like people in my day to day. Like in the normie life, because it doesn't, because of the stigma. Because you can't just come out and say like, yeah, I've been there before, like people go, oh, maybe I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just that people like are judgmental. Yeah. And I'm like, hey man, I've like had some times that was like a decade ago, and my life is absolutely wonderful now. So like, why are you weird about hearing me even just say the words? Whereas like people in the population that I like work for, they get it. You don't even have to like have a conversation about it, because they're living it, and so
and it's like when you've been through it yourself too, it's like you feel like you can relate to the people that are going through it now, and it's kind of like not just somebody looking in a book going, oh, this is what the symptoms are, you know what I mean? Like you can really relate to where they're at. I see it like you go to the doctor if you, I don't know, break a bone or whatever, right? So why can't we go to the doctor when we're having mental health issues? Why can't it be exactly the same? you
Yeah.
know. So that's kind of where I see it anyway. So good
I
for
always
you.
laugh at my, sorry.
I'm proud of you for working in that.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
yeah. And what were you going to say? Sorry, I cut you off there.
I always just laugh because I can always tell when I'm like, because mental health, it's a roller coaster. It is what it is. And when you're like having like a time and you're struggling, um, it's always when I'm kind of coming out of something like that, or I'm like when I'm just feeling better because I'm in a better space, maybe physically, mentally, whatever it is. My writing ramps right up. That's when all of a sudden I'm really inspired. I'm playing way more music and I'm like excited about it. And I'm like, that's always sort of like a good, like, you can always tell when I'm like doing better because a lot more songs are flowing.
Definitely. And it's cathartic
Yeah.
too, right? It is. It
So
is.
cathartic.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite artist right now? I know that's like a really difficult thing to ask, but just changing the subject now. Do you have a favorite artist? I'm so random.
A favorite artist. I mean, I'm not a person to be like, wow, this is my favorite band or my favorite whatever. That's a very difficult question.
Yeah. I know you like.
I've always really liked Propaganda, and I think that they're a really important band. They like have influenced so many people to be like a good positive like force in the world for so many different reasons and so many different like they just are constantly like pushing the boundaries. Like they're a punk band, but you listen to their albums now and I'm like, they're a metal band and sometimes and they're like a prog band in other ways, and they're just they do so much stuff and they cover so many like important topics that like kind of need to be discussed, and so they've just kind of always been up there for me. But yeah.
Cool. Always pushing boundaries, which is good too, right? Like, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so what advice would you give to someone interested in getting into the music industry? Chuckle. Yeah.
I think like don't be afraid to ask questions. That's a thing that I think a lot of people are like intimidated by people who have experience. Like I know I was when I was younger. And I asked some questions from people that like weren't willing to help, and and so then it makes you kind of go, oh, okay, like this isn't how you do it, and but I would say I would advise people, if you're young and you're kind of just trying to get started out, like ask questions, and if you don't get the answers from somebody or they kind of blow you off, ask somebody else, because some people just aren't in the mood. Some people have that stupid thing where they feel like because they had to figure it out on their own that everybody has to like, I don't believe in that. And so if anybody asks me questions, I'm happy to answer, like, and so there's, for everybody that's going to like blow you off, there's a me around as well. And so just ask questions, and, and also try to think ahead, like try to like think about what your needs are, think about what needs to happen, and if that means like how are you preparing for the studio, or how are you preparing for a tour, or how are you preparing for a gig, like try to think ahead and think about what are my needs going to be if my pedal board fails, like, and we're on stage,
right.
know what you're going to do before that actually happens. Like if that happens, you already know, okay, when we just bypass all the pedals straight into the amp or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
So those are two pretty big things that I had to learn those lessons on my own. And
good advice. It's good advice because you never know, right? Like you got to be prepared.
Be prepared. Be prepared for if your flights get canceled. What's the backup plan? Be prepared for if you're, if the van breaks down, what's the plan? Do you have a CAA like account or something? Like make sure that you just sort of like think about where you're going, what you're doing, and and then just be prepared for those things, to be prepared for things to go wrong, be
Yes.
pleasantly surprised when things go right. Yeah.
True. Okay, what would you say is one of your favorite things or one of the best things about being in the music industry?
The community,
Mm-hmm.
which is a double-edged sword, because sometimes people suck and are cutthroat and whatever, but you learn through getting ripped off or getting burned or through word of mouth or whatever, like the people to avoid and or not work with again or whatever.
Yeah.
And then after you've kind of been doing it for a long time, you find yourself surrounded by this community of people that are wonderful,
Mm.
because and as long as you aren't shady and scamming people and ripping people off, uh, everybody sort of figures out who are good people to work with and who aren't. And so I love the community. Like, uh, I have friends everywhere. I have friends
Mhm.
everywhere in the world now, because I've toured lots of places, and every city you like meet somebody and you like connect with them, and then like next time you're around that way, or they come to your town or something, and you just have these friends. It's like, and it's a really unique relationship that you end up having, because you know you played a gig with you in Vienna or something, and like, you might not know anything about that person, but you had that one really fantastic experience or something, and then you end up, years later, you're still friends with them, and it's a wonderful thing that's like pretty unique to the music world.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, those experiences are stories you'll have forever. Memories you'll have forever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, what do you think is one of the worst things about the music industry?
I mean, almost the exact thing. Like
Yeah,
the
it's the same thing
the the
almost. Yeah.
community also can be terrible,
Right.
because
Right.
people, some promoters aren't great, some other bands aren't great, um, yeah. Yeah, I don't like when people are clearly like blowing smoke up your ass, or people who are think that they need to like ladder climb in order to like make it through the industry. Like, I'm just like, man, just be genuine, be
Yeah.
yourself,
Right.
um, do what you do, because there's room for everybody in the music industry. Because if it's genuine and it's real, then people are gonna pick up on that and respond to you. And so, like, no bands are competing with other bands, like, no,
Yeah.
that's not. And so I don't like it when bands act like they're in competition, or because people, there's room to use and abuse in the music industry. And that's my least favorite part, is just realizing that somebody is just, you know
Yeah. Like the competition there.
it's like the business, where they're treating you like a business and a commodity, and I'm like, man, that's just like not why I'm here, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. And there is room for everyone. There is. If you're doing your own thing, like
Yeah,
then there's room. No one's going to be exactly the same as you. It's just how
exactly.
it is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. I
I
get.
I always say to people, like, I'm like, I write music for me, like,
Hmm.
yeah, or like music that I'm gonna like, or that all of us in the band like.
Yeah.
Don't write music for thinking like, oh, people are gonna like this. Like, I know that lots of people do that.
Right.
I
Right.
don't do it. I
Yeah.
don't think that that's why you should be playing music. I think that you should just be playing good music that you love and enjoy, and that's gonna like translate.
Right.
Um,
Right.
you can smell it a mile away when people are writing songs that's just to,
Yeah.
you
When it's
know,
not real.
this will sell. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, you got to be happy with it yourself. And
Yeah.
if you're not happy with it yourself, then I mean, what's the point? Like, there's just
Yeah.
no point to it. Yeah. I get it. I get it. Um, do you have any upcoming projects? So I know you're going on tour. What is going on with your music? Like, do you have any upcoming projects that way? Like any?
Yeah. So Blacked Out's been working on a new record
Mhm.
for quite a while, because COVID kind of threw our whole rhythm off and whatever, and
Mhm.
everybody's lives had to balance out after. I had
Yeah.
a kid and
Yeah.
our
Okay.
businesses and whatnot, and so we've been working on a new record for a while, but it's coming together. We have, excuse me, the songs are ready, like, to go, and we're like just working on pre-prod now and getting them ready to be like studio ready.
Yeah.
ATD has been writing a new record again for quite a while, but like, we actually started making lots of progress recently and coming together. Funny thing with ATD is we can have like 15 songs, but it's still only, an 18-minute record or something. So,
Yeah. That's cool
so
though. That's
yeah,
cool.
oh yeah, it's super fun. I have been, because I try to do like the Stephen King method, where I just try to write every day
Mhm.
something, whether it's good, usable, might be a techno song, might be a country song, might be whatever. And so
Yeah.
in that process, I've come up with a bunch of songs that are like not blacked out songs, and they're not ATD songs,
Mm.
and I kind of nowhere else to put music right now. So I've decided that I'm gonna do like a solo project where I just record all the parts and just put songs out, not as like a project to go perform and play shows
Yeah.
necessarily, but
Yeah.
just to throw a record out into the universe and see what happens. So,
That's
but
cool.
that's definitely got to take the back seat to my actual bands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do have like a record's worth of like songs that are like 75-80% that just need some like tweaks and finishes, and then I'll actually like record it. So I don't know, I'll probably
Cool.
get to that like next year or
That's so cool. Warren, I'd
something.
love
But
to do something with you. Like, I know my
yeah,
style is all over the board. I'm all
right
over
on.
the place. Like,
All
I'm
right,
techno, I'm country, I'm everything. Like, I'm all over the place. But I think it'd be cool if we should collaborate on a song
do
or
a
two.
collab, yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
and that'd be cool, right? That'd be
I'd
cool.
love that. Yeah,
That would be very cool. So okay, so you say you have that coming up, so that's really cool.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite music collaboration of your own that you've done or that you'd like to talk about? Do you have something that stands out?
Not really, because I've never really like collaborated with
Okay,
anybody.
well
I
then
don't
that's
think
just
I.
you and me then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have. Yeah, I've never released anything with anybody else. So
yeah.
yeah.
Cool. I think we should collaborate. I really do.
All right, all
I don't
right.
know if you've heard my new stuff, but it's all over the place. It's everywhere. It's like I don't even know what it is. It's everywhere.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah. And do you have an exciting show? Like, what is your most exciting show that you've done performed to date? Do you have one that sticks out?
Um, yeah. Like when I played with Bishop's Green, I got to play some like huge festivals that, you know, and like I was kind of like buddies with, a couple of guys, the drummer and stuff before I joined the band. Um, but I don't think I quite realized like where they were in Europe. Like they're a big band over there.
Mm.
And so I joined Bishop's Green, and like 3 weeks later, we're playing like Bogota, Colombia, and like Mexico City, and like some pretty awesome gigs. And then, but like my fifth show with them, fourth or fifth gig, we went to Europe and we played the Sound of Revolution festival, which is like a punk hardcore fest in Eindhoven. I think it was like 5,000 people or something there, and we played on one of the main stages. And I
Wow.
remember just like having that moment of like, I didn't quite realize like the scope of this maybe before. Like I knew that we had like some festivals on the tour, but that first time that you're stepping up onto a stage in front of like the sea of people,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and that was really exciting. And
Yeah.
and it showed me, to personalize the experience, because I don't really get nervous. Everybody always asks, it's like a common question as a musician, like, don't you get nervous? And I've never really gotten nervous. I kind of just get a little more like focused.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
instead of like performing in like a flow state where I'm not really like thinking about anything, I'm just being and playing, and I'm not like, there's no like mental process that's happening before what I'm doing.
Mm.
When I in place of being nervous, I get more like focused, and so then I am thinking like, okay, this is the first verse, second chorus is coming up, and then then we have the little intro riff again, and then verse two, and then like, so I am thinking steps ahead, if that makes any
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
And so stepping on to the stage at that show, I definitely like zapped into that mode, and then I still got to perform like a fantastic gig, but it took me a while to learn how to like be on those sorts of stages and those sorts of crowds and also be in a flow state, because that's pure performance, as far, in my opinion, at least, when you're not thinking about it, you're just doing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that show was a bit of like a signifier for me, where I went, oh, okay, here's a thing that I want to work at. I want to get better at, achieving like a flow state in front of like a very large audience. And so, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. And I don't know about you, but I've always had a dream of getting like a bunch of friends that have bands, like even from back home in Nova Scotia, and just all going on tour together, like all together. Like, I don't know, it's a dream I've had ever since like being back there, because we have so many friends that are in bands and musicians and things like that. Like, Isa and like all, and I always had that dream. I was like, we could all go on tour together, maybe one day. We'll see. But anyway, I'd like everyone to check out all of your socials. So can you tell us what your social media handles are so people can find you?
All my personal stuff is just Morgan Farrell Music. I'm mostly active on Instagram and like Facebook by virtue of Instagram, I guess. Don't really do Twitter too much or TikTok or whatever, but I do have handles on there that are all Morgan Farrell Music. Blacked Out, everything is Blacked Out Band. Same there. We're mostly Instagram and Facebook are where we're most active. And ATD is under A Total Disappointment with underscores in between. And so, yeah, you can go find out.
I love that name. I love that. It's just like,
it sets the bar. It makes it a real achievable, like, you can blow people away when they're already expecting.
That's cool. I like all of the names of your bands, but that's cool. That's cool. Awesome.
Hey, I want to give another shout out as well to my wife's band, Alien Boys.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I didn't know you had a band. That's awesome. Oh my God. Tell her I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
Darren is the singer of Alien Boys, and they're amazing, political punk rock. And they're a wonderful band, and they've played Toronto a number of times. I think they're going back in October. So
are they? Okay, you know what? I should have her on my show. Ask her if she'd like to come on my show. I'd love to have her on the show. I like to promote everybody that I know that's in a band.
For sure. Yeah, no, I know that they would love to be on it for sure. Like that. Yeah. They're always into like any cool promo. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I'm so excited that you have a new baby. That's how old is your baby? Tell everybody how old your baby is.
2.5.
2.5.
2.5. He's ripping around, full of thoughts and opinions, and learning how to verbalize those things.
I love it, Morgan. I love it. Hopefully I'll get to meet him and your wonderful wife someday, very soon. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody check out Morgan's stuff on all of the platforms that we talked about. And I just want to say thanks again for being on the show. You're such a good friend, and I've been a fan of yours for many years. Still am. Keep checking, keep doing it. And before I leave, I just want to say, everybody, let the music live through you. Thank you so much, Morgan, for being on the show. Talk to you soon, my friend. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.